do the same just in case. Always good to have a backup.
You beat me to it.
Oh, did I hijack the recording function? Sorry about that. All right, Ross, I don't know about you, but we'll give maybe another minute here. I don't want to keep everybody holding.
Sounds good, Mike.
A few more people popping in. For those of you that joined us early, thank you so much. We appreciate the early attendance. Don't have a whole lot to share with you other than a thank you at this point. Wish I could give each one of you a handshake, but that's not where we are right now. So we'll get started in just a second here. Again, we're going to go ahead and mute everybody. I know everybody's muted. We're doing good there. The chat window's there. If you want to put anything in the chat window for the Q&A at the end, we're happy to field those questions as they come in the order they're received. And we had a really good list of questions. So hopefully, based on the information that we presented last time and what you're going to hear today, we can give you some really good insight on ways to keep your business efficient. We all know that efficiency is a key part of the finances right now. So hopefully what you learned today will provide some insight to that. So Ross, if you're ready.
Let's go.
All right. So welcome to Sustaining Business. This is a webinar that we are co-hosting with MacTech. We want to thank MacTech for their efforts here, Ross, specifically for putting this together with us. Our intention today is to provide you some high-level insight. There'll be some specifics on some of the architecture and some of the materials, but to really try to help you improve your efficiencies while minimizing your costs. So our hope is that the information provided today, regardless of the platform that you use or the ink type that you're using, it will provide you some ways to keep your costs down on some level and manage your business a little bit more efficiently. I'm sure that many of you already have some of these practices in place, but it's important now more than ever that we manage our costs as efficiently as possible so that we can continue to
Unmuted.
That being said, my name is Michael Maxwell with Mimaki USA. I'm the senior manager for our corporate strategic development department. We'll work with companies such as MacTech to try and develop ways for our products to utilize more efficiently in your shops. And our idea right now is to make sure that we provide you as much information as we can, high level, to keep your businesses relevant while we're complying with local and government restrictions on COVID-19. So thanks for joining us. We had a webinar previous to this. We'll reference that in just a few minutes, but we've got a really good set of information here for you. So I'll turn over to Ross to give a little bit of an introduction to his set. Ross.
Hello and welcome. Thanks, Mike, and thank you and Lisa for helping us to reach out to customers in regards to the current market situation. My name is Ross Burnham. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager here at MacTech for the Distribution Products team. I've been with MacTech for about 19 years, helping customers in the print community with their pressure-sensitive adhesive needs. I'm calling from the safety of my home here in Stowe, Ohio, which is also the home of our North American headquarters. Like Mimaki, MacTech is prioritizing the safety of our employees, their families, our suppliers, and you, our valued customers. Many of our functional teams are working from their homes, but our plants remain open, supplying pressure-sensitive adhesives to the print community. And I'm really happy to be here.
So thanks, Ross, for that. A little bit about Mimaki. We've been an innovator and a pioneer in the development of digital printing and cutting products worldwide for 50 years. We manage machines, ink, software, and consumables for print and cut devices across 150 countries globally. This focus, combined with our partnership on materials such as MacTech, have enabled us to provide our customers, like you, useful insight and trends, tips, efficiencies to help manage your business. Now more than ever, like I mentioned before, efficiency is a key. As finances are tightened, we want to share with you some of the ways that we feel that you can improve your bottom line while staying open. In our previous discussion, we showed some really great applications that you can adopt or shift to produce. So we want to try and talk about, once you're producing those, what you can do to be a little bit more efficient. On the MacTech side, I'll turn it over to Ross to speak a little bit about what their line is and what they can do for you.
Thanks, Mike. Mactac has been innovating the pressure-sensitive adhesive industry for over 60 years. We're a $350 million company with 600 employees working with printers across the industry. Our products are used in the flexographic, sheet-fed offset, and wide-format digital print markets. Mactac is part of the Lintec Corporation of Japan, a $2 billion global pressure-sensitive company. We're trying hard to help your business grow and survive in these situations. The products that we're talking about are going to be able to use in hospital settings, restaurants, grocery stores, pharmacies, and other essential businesses. As Mike mentioned, the previous webinar that we had some specific products for some specific applications, and we invite you to go back and check that out to learn more about those. We're really going to be focusing on some of the areas to help with your efficiencies, whether it's purchasing the right product for the right application, whether it is looking at a short roll opportunity or materials needed, or look at a specific product that we'd like to highlight that may help you with the media for use in every print asset in your facility. The products that we're mentioning today are just a small part of our offering for media, laminates, mounting adhesives, and colored vinyl.
Great. So in reference to what we did the last time, we did a sustaining business and creating some applications that are needed to help your local communities. We reviewed these top applications ideas for you, and we won't go through these in detail to Ross's point, but just a high level, we talked about wall graphics for any kind of directional graphics that might be needed right now. There's a lot of companies in your local communities that are adopting new practices for social distancing that might need to put up new store hours or any kind of directional. A lot of the grocery stores are putting one-way aisles in, for example. Being able to produce these graphics and put them on the walls in a very short time frame are very critical for them to give their customers the direction of their policies and everything else. Additionally, floor graphics can also be used for directional, just like the one way I just mentioned. They can also provide guidance on how to keep a safe distance when you're waiting in line to check out. Or to provide some, directional of where the most needed items are. There are a lot of items like toilet paper that customers are going after, and these graphics can provide you a quick directional of how to get through the store and navigate without having to go up and down the aisles and possibly cross in front of other people that may or may not be, taking the proper precautions. In addition to that, signage and decals, there are a lot of shops that are putting up new signage outside of their facilities. They're putting up signage to provide you where to park, when you can go into the store, where to line up. There's a lot of different things that you can do. And then last but not least, window graphics for store hours and other policies that may be in place. So there's a lot of really good applications that are available. And we encourage you to go to our websites and check out the video from the last one if you want to get a little bit more detail on these applications. But for our efforts today, we wanted to talk about how we can help you be efficient. So through our goals today, we want to provide some tips to manage your costs, reduce stress, and help you develop and produce these applications more efficiently. And the key thing is to help you. Our number one priority between MacTech and Mimaki is to help you so that you can keep your businesses relevant, but also keep your businesses streamlined as much as possible. So we've got some materials and some other different things to focus on, but on the MacTech side, Ross has some updates that he wanted to provide you on materials, some things that they're doing on their end to provide you with some ways to cost manage what you would normally purchase to print on. So hopefully this information is of use to you, and we look forward to some questions and answers at the end. Ross, if you have anything to add there, go for it.
I think we're good.
Okay. So most machines have some sort of these features. Many machines have one or more. Depending on the technology, they may be named something different. So if it isn't a Mimaki product, reference your operator manual to try and figure it out. But we wanted to touch base on some of these key items because we've found over the years, even before the COVID situation, that many customers were either not aware that these features may exist on their product, or have made a decision to buy a product because these are on the new product that they're looking at. And a lot of these features are not unique in the marketplace. They might exist on other products. There are a few features that are listed here that are more unique to the Mimaki family. But Mimaki specifically has most of these features built into every one of our printers. And the reason for this is because they provide stability in four key areas for our customers: quality, reliability, productivity, and cost. Those four tenets are very important to us for our customers because we know that if the product performs really well, it's reliable, it gives you the quality that you're looking for, you're not going to have a lot of wasted material, time, and ink. And it's really important that you don't have those now because you don't want to have to repeat a job if you've got a very limited amount of material available to you, or if the material that you purchase, you're trying to utilize as much as you can in order to be efficient. So one of the things we wanted to touch on today from the machine side is to make sure that you're activating your cleaning functions effectively. Those cleaning functions are on the machine for a reason. Don't bypass those. Make sure that you are paying attention to the settings on those cleaning functions so that the machine can refresh itself as efficiently as possible. That's going to reduce nozzle dropout. It's going to reduce quality drops. It's going to reduce a lot of different things. But there's some other things that are key, and they tie into the architecture and also through the software and the ink. And we'll get into that in a little bit as well. But some of the calibration functions are on the machine and also through the software. And one of the most important ones specific to digitally printing on materials such as the materials MacTech makes is the heat, making sure that the media temperature is optimized to receive the ink. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be applied in a very high range, right? You don't necessarily have to turn the heat all the way up, but some inks have a very specific range where they perform really well, and the material also has a very specific range. So if you look at the material that you're working with and the ink that you're working with, make sure you have your media and your heat optimized on the machine so that your droplets form properly when they hit the material, and it gives you the best quality you can look for. It also gives you good coverage because right now a lot of the signage is going to be using a lot of text. It's going to use a lot of solid colors. You want to make sure that you reduce the amount of banding or the amount of spacing that you have between those drops so that you don't have material peek through. The other thing is to make sure that you have your nozzle check functions, if they're available, active. For the Mimaki platform, we have what we call the nozzle check unit. It allows us to, in real time, monitor whether or not the printhead is physically producing a drop. This is a great function on our equipment that allows you to understand whether or not the machine is producing a graphic or not. Some machines in the past don't have these types of functions on it, and if the printer stops producing a drop of ink, it doesn't stop producing the motion, so it ends up becoming a wasted material, ink, and time situation. So these types of features are very useful to prevent that from happening. And then in addition to that, if you have nozzle recovery functions where you can map nozzles out, in the case of Mimaki, we have that. And we also have the ability to automatically map those out so that you don't have to sit there and watch the machine produce. You can go and do something else. Maybe you've got your employees working from home and you're at the shop by yourself. You want to be able to answer the phone. You want to be able to do other things. Maybe you're doing your taxes right now. I know tax day just passed, but if you wanted to do your taxes or something like that, you don't want to have to sit there and watch the machine run throughout your entire production. So that peace of mind there that the machine is doing some of this on its own is very critical, and it also prevents, again, that lost material and time. And if you're using any kind of special ink sets, whether it's a white or a metallic silver or even a clear circulation technology built in the machine, make sure that those are activated if they're optional activations on your machine. That way that the machine is constantly keeping those inks agitated so that they don't clog or create any problems for you. And last but not least, make sure that your ink that you're using is optimized for the printer. I know that there are a lot of different inks on the market. Now is not the time to switch to something just because it's cheaper. Make sure that the ink that you're using is optimized. Sometimes that potential savings that you see up front is going to create more maintenance issues for you on the back end, and that can create a lot of downtime and really cost you a lot more in the long run. So I would say if it's not broken, don't fix it. Just keep your machine running the way that it has been, and try not to make any harsh changes to the way that the ink or the architecture is designed. On the software side for us, making sure that your software is optimized for the machine is critical. So for a lot of you, you're probably using either the software that came with the machine or you're using an additional software that you purchased separately from it. My intention, again, is not to create a reason to jump from one or the other, but to provide you some guidance of what to look for. Some of the key things, though, for a material usage standpoint is going to be the auto nesting. Make sure you're taking advantage of that function in your RIP. Most RIPs have that, if not all of them on the market now. And most of them are very well designed, in which case they can auto rotate and they can really put the files as close to each other as possible to allow you to functionally cut them after or do whatever you need after without wasting a lot of material. It's really a good practice to try and group all of your jobs together and produce them in the most efficient way, so that you don't have a lot of empty space on the material. That's going to reduce your costs. It's also going to prevent you from having a lot of additional printing to do, which in many cases will slow you down, because if you're not using the full width of the printer, your actual production side speeds are going to be impacted as a result of that. So try to take as full use of the width of the machine that you have along with the material and optimize the jobs as much as you can. Another thing that has come up over the years, which is a critical thing, is make sure that your RIP has some sort of cut functionality. The worst thing that you can do is have to jump between different software platforms that might register the job differently or might have different scaling functions in the way that they look at the file. That could create a lot of problems for you in making sure that your cuts are accurate. So most RIP software has a variety of these functions, but it's important to focus on them to make sure that you're maximizing the usage. In the case of the special colors, some of the RIP specific features for special colors or layers, those are usually present in the manufacturer's provided RIP, such as Mimaki's Rasterlink 6. Again, I'm not making an argument to switch from one software to another, but if you haven't been utilizing these features, these features grant access to advanced workflows while reducing the need to create heavy art files. So if your artists are working remotely and you're having internet issues, like I've had over the past couple of weeks, it's really important for you not to have to transfer heavy files back and forth to produce. Those files can take a longer time to RIP. They can create errors. So being able to produce these things on the RIP level really helps out the efficiency of the job and also helps it make adjustments as needed. So there's a kind of a representation of some layers right there on the right-hand side of your screen. Using step and repeat functions is also a great practice to reduce heavy art files. Those files typically can take a long time. So if you're doing all your step and repeat in Illustrator, for example, or in Corel or whatever your design software is, if you're doing it on the art side, it ends up creating a very large file that the RIP has to go through and process. If you can reduce that down to a simple step and repeat process that happens on the RIP level, what it's doing is it's only looking at the small file and it's repeating that multiple times. So it gives your time and efficiency on the software side, and it really takes a lot of the resources away from your computer. And you might be using that same computer right now to do your finances or to try and do things like a webinar like we're doing right now. So being able to reduce the amount of load on your CPU or your memory is a really great thing to allow the RIP to handle. And then finally, though it's final here, it's certainly not the least, is color management. This is a critical step, not only for color, but also for the material compatibility. And I'll let Ross kind of get into that a little bit on his end. But the longevity of the prints, interior and exterior, are dependent on whether or not the profile was designed. And a lot of profiles have the settings built into them. So on the Rasterlink side specifically, we build all the heater settings and everything during the profile process, and we compartmentalize those into our profile settings. So when you pull that profile up, you're getting the optimized heat, all of the density, everything else for that material. And it's important because the ink is either going to cure properly in the case of UV or latex, or it's going to oversaturate the material, like in the case of solvent. And you want to make sure you have the optimization of that ink, not only for the color again, but to also make sure that you're not wasting ink. You're also improving your drying capability in the case of like solvent that requires a little bit more time to dry. And it makes sure that your material is not being affected. And the material can be affected in many different levels, including the adhesive or during the lamination process. So profiles are a huge part of the discussion when you're doing this. So if you've just been using canned settings in your software all this time, you may be spending more money than you need to on ink. And you may be creating a longer delivery time. And right now, I think that with the amount of retail spaces that are trying to make these changes, you want to be as efficient and deliver these signs or whatever you're producing as quickly as possible. So using profiles is a great way to do that. To that point, the profiles are dependent on the ink. I'd like to touch base on ink. These are the most common ink types in the signage space. There are certainly more available to the market. Mimaki is a unique manufacturer in that we develop and produce our own inks. We develop inks for almost every product that we offer currently. And this gives us a better perspective. I guess the only products we don't produce ink for are going to be our cutting devices. But this gives us a better perspective on when to offer one technology over the other. So in our world, we don't try to position one ink as better than the other. Every ink has its place. And what I've got up here on the screen is just some generalized rules of thumb on the ink. We've had a much more efficient time with UV curable ink. You'll see that at the top. It's got a little bit more going for it. Because the ink sits on the surface of the material and it's instant dry technology, and that once light hits it, it's immediately turned into a solid. It gives us the ability to produce very quickly and turn around and deliver very quickly. And because it's sitting on the surface of the material, it also tends to have a little bit of a higher abrasion resistance when you rub against it. So lamination may not be necessary. That's going to be job dependent, but it's something that you can make a choice on. And the stretch characteristics, depending on the machine and the ink that you choose, may give you the ability to do things like vehicle graphics if you need to, or they may be more rigid. So it's going to depend on what type of technology you've got, what ink you've chosen. There's some variables there. But UV curable ink is a really good, well-rounded, if you have that in your shop, you can use it for signage or any kind of other interior, exterior. The most common is solvent ink. That's probably in most of your shops, or you've had access to a solvent printer at some point. This has the highest fade resistant in an outdoor environment. It has the highest stretch characteristics as well because of the way that it bonds on a molecular level to the material that it's being printed to. And it has a higher chemical resistance natively without any lamination. And with this ink, lamination is also optional. And the profiles are important on this one because the profiles determine how much ink we're laying down on the material, and the material itself is actually becoming one with the ink. It's binding them together. So it's important to have the right amount of ink that gives you the color range that you're looking for and the dry times you're looking for, but not so much ink that you oversaturate the material and create softening in the material or other issues that can occur. And then last but not least is the latex technology. This is also available and widely used in the signage space. It is a faster dry technology than some of the other inks like solvent, and it does have good stretch characteristics, but for this, it is a water-based ink, so it does require lamination for more durability in outdoor environment. And the profiles are very important because this ink does require a lot of heat to cure properly. So it does require you to make sure that you have your heaters optimized so that you're not expanding, contracting your materials inefficiently, which can create problems for you when you're trying to make very precise cuts. And the approximation of the costs, those are going to vary depending on where you're getting your ink from, where you're buying it, the brand of the ink, the quantity. But as a general rule of thumb, we usually use 1 cc of ink per square foot as full coverage. And these are approximate costs. UV curable tends to be on the lowest end, and that can range anywhere from 10 to 20 cents. The average is about 15. And when you're looking at solvent ink, you're typically looking somewhere around 21 cents. Now, this is true ink cost. When you're looking at latex, there are other things to consider depending on the technology you're using, but the average ink cost is around 21 cents by itself. Again, if you buy in larger quantities or you have access to a different dealer or local shop that's got maybe some discounts on ink, that range can change a little bit, but these are pretty good rules of thumb. So if you have access to these technologies in your shop, especially if you have access to one or more, it's probably a good rule of thumb to try and start with the UV curable first for your general signage needs right now, just to keep your costs down. But if you only have access to solvent or latex, I wanted to give you kind of an idea of where you are with your cost. So that's a kind of a guideline of some of the things that you can do on your equipment side, and also from the ink perspective. If you are looking to add a new technology because your business has to change, you have to adopt a new technology, we encourage you to look at them kind of in this order, because it does provide you the best results and most efficiencies. Again, there are other things to consider, but if you have any questions, we'll provide you the ability to ask those at the end here, and we'll give you the ability to reach out to us separate from this conversation. With that being said, I'd like to turn over the conversation to Ross over at MacTech and speak about the material side of this conversation. Ross?
Very good. Thanks, Mike. So in the next slide here, we're getting into some of the questions that need to be asked in order to help select the right products for applications. And a big one is how long does your image need to last for? And the reason why that's important is companies like MacTech typically offer a platform of products for a good, better, best application. What we don't want to see is you over-engineer a project by specifying a material that is more expensive than what you really need for that application. With that, you've got wide format medias that are offered in promotional, which is typically 1-year applications. Those are print, ink, apply, cut, and out the door they go. They're typically not laminated. You do have other opportunities where you're going to see intermediate requirements, intermediate being 4 or 5 year life expectancies. And with some of the inks on an indoor, you may not need to laminate that. But there are laminates that are available for 4-year economic applications, such as our PromoGuard, a 7-year indoor-outdoor, our ColorGuard LUV, and for the really high applications for laminates, the cast razor, which is a 1.5 mil cast vinyl material, would be recommended. So again, how long are you looking for? Is it short-term, long-term? Good, better, best is what we're looking at. One of the things with over laminates is that not only is it used to extend the durability of the image and UV protection from sun fade, and that photo in the upper right was a picture that I took on a recent bike ride in my community. You can see you can't really read the words. So there's a lot of investment there. There's a lot of effort to put that sign up, and you really can't see what it says after a couple of years of direct sunlight. If that image had been laminated with a laminate that had UV inhibitors in it, it probably would have lasted 2 times the length of what the normal ink rating is for that manufactured press. The other part about using a laminate is that it helps your image to be seen. If you're in a facility, whether it's a restaurant or a hospital or somewhere, and you're getting a reflection from light bounce, then you're looking at the light, you're not looking at the image, you're not looking at the message that is necessary. So an over laminate with either a matte or a luster finish can help knock down that reflection from the light. The other thing that a laminate is going to help you do is going to protect the image. It's going to protect it from scratching. It's going to be able to keep it clean. And in today's wipe down environment, there's going to be a lot of cleaning that's going on. So a laminate is going to help keep your image looking as new as it was the day it was put up, as opposed to grinding dirt into a PVC vinyl face or smearing of the inks. So a lot of good things that laminates can do for your applications. And again, looking at a good, better, best, how long does the image need to last, will help you dial in the most economic choice for your application. Next slide. Want to get a little bit into depth with the intermediate line that MacTech has, and that is our ColorGuard High Performance Intermediate. Lisa, if you can click the slide for us. The ColorGuard line of products is an intermediate line that was designed several years ago to work not only on solvent and latex, but also on UV printed images. The material for ColorGuard for the adhesive will wet out onto the UV ink sets, And whether you're using a UV press that might have been a little bit older, where you had different high and low spots, or some of the new UV inkjets that are a little more flat, what you're going to find with a product like ColorGuard is that you're going to get immediate wet out on your print during the cold lamination process. This means you're going to eliminate fish eyes, you're going to eliminate sparkles, and most importantly, you're going to eliminate color shift. So when you've got trapped air between your laminate and your image, you could actually turn a black image into a green image, and we call that color shift. The other thing that you're going to find is that a product like this that will wet out fast will help you through the finishing process in your fabrication. So if you've got an image and it's got sparkles in it, and you're a little worried about sending that out to your customer because it might be rejected and you might have to wait a couple of days, well, that's a couple of days you may not have, and your customer definitely doesn't have. So the ability to reduce that cycle time of print, apply, laminate, cut, and finish and ship should help you out, and should help out with cash flow. The other thing that we're finding that customers are utilizing this material for is not only pressure sensitive vinyl applications where you would have signage and wall graphics and items like that, but you also have the ability to take this product and laminate flexible magnet material. So if you're printing flexible magnet and looking for a way to protect that image, especially for wipe down, the ColorGuard material is a good choice for that. We also have customers that are utilizing this for direct to board. So if you've got a flatbed Mimaki press that you're doing the 4-color print and you're looking to protect that image, ColorGuard will let